if you have to do it 3 times, how do we make it into a piece of technology? How can we automate it? So if you have to do it 3 times, let's automate it, because you're gonna have to do it 3 more, and we can solve that time and probably do it better, right? Like we joke that AI doesn't have a bad day. AI's boyfriend didn't break up with it on its way into work. AI didn't get a speeding ticket. It can definitely help.
Katie Donovan, thank you so much for joining me today on RevOps Champions. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, honestly, so much for having me. I've really appreciated you reaching out and getting to be on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I guess you have Sam Anala to thank for that. And in fact, we were just having lunch before I came in here, and the team was asking me, well, I said, I got to get ready for my podcast recording with Katie Donovan, and the team was like, how did you meet her? And Sam was like, that was me.
I love Sam. I've known Sam probably longer than she cares for me to tell you how long I've known Sam. Long enough to carry bail money. Sorry, Sam. Whenever we go out, but no, I'm a big fan. So she's awesome. I love her to death.
Katie, so you're the founder and CEO of Camp Digital. Before I ask the question, I noticed when you talk about yourself as a CEO, you put periods between the C, the E, and the O. What is that about?
I don't even know if that's necessarily intentional. I wish I could tell you something. Okay. I wish I could tell you something deep there. I don't think I can. Yeah.
I've met, the reason I asked was just in case, because I've often, met CEOs and founders who they like, I'm not the chief executive officer, I'm the chief energy officer.
I wish. I'm going to come up with something really good for the next time. But I'll tell you, actually, there's a kind of an interesting little secret there. I am severely learning disabled. I have dyslexia. It's actually, I call it my superpower, but it is definitely something I've learned. So I think a lot of those things I just completely miss. And I probably assume there should be periods between the C, the E, and the O, in fairness. Right. So
it sounds like you're an entrepreneur to me.
Yeah, right. Yes, that too. So yeah.
And yeah, that's that's why I spend as much time as I can with entrepreneurs, because we all have some commonalities, whether it's ADHD or learning disabilities or whatever, but which become our superpowers if we allow them to be, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Katie, rewinding to 2018, which is when you started Camp Digital, and you started this, Camp Digital essentially is focused on home services marketing.
Yep.
Right. What led to that?
It's actually, again, kind of I love the story. So I was working with my brother, Sean Stapleton. He has a company called Dealer Teamwork, and actually how I met Sam, funny enough. And we had just won a couple of pretty prestigious prizes from Google. We had won their top 5 Innovator Cup for mobile innovation in the United States. And because of this, I was sitting in a room with some pretty great people from Google. And right before the whole meeting started, one of the guys leaned over to me and he said, his name was Julio. And Julio said, Katie, get out of auto. And then the meeting started. And I sat there for like 2 hours just sweating. Like, did I upset Julio? Am I sleeping with the fishes tonight? Like, what does this mean? Everybody gets up and leaves. And I turn over to Julio, like not a minute had passed. And I said, what do you mean get out of auto? And he said, the home services space needs something exactly like this. And so he introduced me to one of the home service, head of agency for home service. And we launched Camp Digital.
Yeah, it is, I must say, it is a fascinating space. I'd love to spend some time talking with you about that at another time, because I think this is where we're at the beginning of sort of the golden age of services businesses. And I think a lot of services businesses listening would probably go, well, this has been golden for a long time, but I think it's going to get, a lot better. And I'm sure you have some really good views on that, because I think part of your unique ability is the way you see the world, the business world, through and how technology is going to continuously make it better. So tell us a little bit. So, because I know you've also created your own, a product, a dashboard called Capacity Pro, which I'm guessing is part of what I'm saying is like you like creating solutions through technology that just make businesses run better and more effectively.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us more about Capacity Pro.
Well, I'm going to back up to something you just said because I wrote it down because I loved it so much. The golden age of service businesses. I think you could not be more right with that statement, especially with where the markets are going with AI and everything happening in the world. I think that that can't be replaced, right? You're still going to need someone to come in and snake your drains, snake your toilets. And it's been really interesting to watch the evolution, which will get to your second part of your question there, which is one of the reasons Google said, hey, get in the space, is because at the time it was a technological desert. So in 2018, when I was at this event with Google, home services space was a technological desert. There wasn't really even CRMs. Like I know you guys are big HubSpot folks. There wasn't even that necessarily yet in the space.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me. Since then, there's been some huge innovation in that space. But that was the opportunity we identified. We said, hey, we can bring. We don't really consider ourselves a digital marketing company. CAMP is a digital marketing company for the trades. CAMP actually stands for Capacity Aligned Marketing Platform. That's what it stands for. But we realized, hey, there's a better way to do this with technology that can help augment it. So we built the Capacity Pro, which is our capacity system that sits between their CRM and the marketing tech stack that says, hey, if you're full, pull back on spend. Because unlike other industries like shoes or golf clubs, I can make more. I cannot make more technicians to sit in the truck. If I'm full, I'm full. And most people
Uh-huh.
aren't willing to wait. If your drain is backing up and water is, coming into your basement, you're not gonna be like, oh yeah, Thursday's fine. Come out, whenever you get here. So we realize that it's very capacity driven. So we put a little piece of software in that helps manage that connection, and really found a huge and unique opportunity to do that. And the growth in this and the timing we were very lucky on timing, because to your point, the growth in the home services space and any services, but home services particularly, has been astronomical.
But it sounds to me like the Capacity Pro dashboard. I mean, other than because as you were kind of explaining that, it reminds me of when I first learned this concept was through salons. Um, I was in the peer advisory group with a guy that ran a very, very large franchise of salons, and they have the same issue, right? Where you have all these, the
Yep.
yeah, whether it's a barber or a hairdresser or whatever. But there's only so many that show up that
That's right.
day. There's only so many chairs, and then there's a clock,
Yep.
right? And if that hour has passed, any appointment that you could have had is gone.
Gone. Yep.
But it sounds to me the way that you've built this Capacity Pro dashboard, which essentially is okay. So there's folks in a truck that can cover so much in the 8 hours that they're working, and you want to make sure you fill their capacity today, tomorrow, and the next day. But to me, that sounds like there must be some other benefit to doing that other than just you know being more efficient on their ad spend.
Yep, absolutely. So there's I think a variety of things, like a salon, because I think that's a great analogy and most people can relate. Not all jobs are the same. I don't want to fill my boards with haircuts. I will if it keeps my people busy. But gosh, man, I love those perms and those cut and colors and balayages or whatever they're called. Those make me more money. So in addition to just keeping it booked or not booked, we can really try and focus on the businesses and on the services that can be higher revenue generating. Can't always
Mhm.
have those. You're not fixing an air conditioning unit in December in Minnesota. You and I have
Right.
both been there.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that to it. And then in addition, one of the pieces of because it's technology based, that we're also able to incorporate, it's a little bit, and I'm going to use this word and people are going to roast me for it, but almost logistics or dispatching. If I'm relatively full and I'm in this, city A, I can't go all the way to city B for one more job. So in addition, we're also able to help with efficiencies around trying to help pull that in, like where are we marketing to? So not just whether or not we're spending budget, but what are we spending it on and where are we spending it? So there's some huge advantages on that component from our side, quite a bit. And then obviously we have the messaging matching websites, and it's really, to use a line from your website, it's trying to help break down some of those silos between marketing and operations.
Really, really cool. So just tell us again. So when so CAMP, CAMP, Yeah, it's a very intentional name. Just to tell us again what it is.
Capacity aligned marketing platform. It's intentional in the fact that it describes what we do. We align the marketing to your capacity, but it's also, we're really campy people. We have a nap room in the office. You come in and we have the ping pong tables and um, we just did they're just finishing it right now. We've got a pickleball court going outside and we have pickleball pal. We like to have a lot of fun too. Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the things that I've sort of learned about you is like culture is essentially, another one of your unfair advantages, as we call it, because and you have you have a social background.
Social work.
Do you
Yep.
want to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us
Sure.
about that? Yeah, I guess I should say social work because
Yep.
nowadays social means many different
Yeah,
things.
right. Yeah. No, I was a social worker working at a women's resource center and loved it, but realized um, that the system, in my opinion, was not necessarily designed to solve the problem, but fix the immediacy. So that kind of frustrated me a little bit. So then I went and worked for a politician for a while, a congressman, and then just realized you were just on a bigger merry-go-round. And I had a great mentor, my father, but then another gentleman named John Greening, who told me that maybe you can't fix and solve the world, but you can create really good things for people and make really good places to work that people want to work and feel respected and maybe improve their lives a little bit. And so we actually reflect that in some of the people we hire. So we hire a little bit uniquely too. We have a lot of LGBTQIA. You can probably tell my old camp logo here. This is not our standard logo. It's a version we did for June. Um, we hire some second chance folks, so people who had a little bit more challenged backgrounds. Really big into hiring people that wouldn't normally be into digital marketing, so minorities, veterans, things like that. So we focus on trying to bring some of those folks in, teach them a trade, which is what we do, and then try and create an environment that makes people happy to work here.
Have you ever put that into a Venn diagram?
No, we haven't. That's interesting. I should.
Because I mean, I could actually picture the Venn diagram as you were speaking. You probably you might be familiar with there's a more complex version in Japanese called ikigai, but even if you just use the simple three circle Venn with the sweet spot in the middle, it sounds like you've really nailed that, where you've taken who you are and all the experience and capability that you bring. You've married that to something that people really need from the services that you provide, and then attracted the people who are attracted to both of those things, which essentially creates that sweet spot in the middle.
I will be stealing that. I already wrote that down. I love that. If you see me looking to the side here, it's because I got my pencil handy. If I don't write it down, it's gone and I lied to you. Like if I tell people I'm going to do something and they don't write it down, yeah, I just lied to you about me doing it.
The question I want to, so on this show, we talk a lot about the thesis of the show is, why do some businesses scale better than others when they seemingly have access to all the same things? So they have access to the same people, they have access to the same capital, they have access to the same technology, but yet some businesses in the same sector will far outperform the others. So whether it's from your personal experience or what you see, working with clients, what do you think businesses that are more scalable, as it were, are doing differently to those who are maybe struggling to scale?
That's an interesting question. And I feel like it's a little bit of a trick question, right? Because I feel like each one of us has something that's allowed us to scale that, to your point, like that becomes your superpower. For me, I'm a very good listener, I think. So when Google said, hey, you should get into home services, literally the next thing I did was say, how can I get into homes? If that's what you're telling me. When I met with them, they laid out 19 verticals, and we're only 5 deep into those 19, right? I mean, so do something like it's been working. And then for me, I think one of the advantages I have is I'm a female in a pretty male dominated space. And it's really helped me, if you're a good listener and you're okay with not having to prove you're the smartest person in the room, you pick up a lot of great stuff, right? People are willing to tell you a lot of things. And so we've been really lucky for me personally. and finding a really nice niche. Google said, hey, it's a technological desert. Technology is my background. Digital marketing is my background. No problem. And so just being a good listener, kind of doing what you're told, getting her done. And then obviously, I think it's always the team too, right? Who you surround yourself with. I'm a collector. So a lot of the people here were with me at a previous place. They'll be with me at the next. I mean, so that helps quite a bit too.
I guess if I were to summarize that, it sounds like, and this, to your point, it is a bit of a trick question, I suppose, but because the answer is very, I guess, congruent with what most guests on the show say, which is essentially it starts with people, right? Um, and fortunately, it ends with technology, but there's some stuff that has to happen between, and what we talk about, there's two steps in between the people and the technology, and that is process and data. And what another thing we talk about a lot is how a lot of entrepreneurs, and I always use myself as the first example because I do suffer from shiny object syndrome, and I too, back in 2013 is a mistake I often talk about. When we bought Salesforce, thinking that the technology was gonna solve all our data, process, and people issues, where in fact I couldn't have been further from the truth. But of course, now I see that happening all around me, and that's also part of why we do what we do. Because then, when we were more, ready for the right technology, a year later, we then found HubSpot, but then we also knew that we had to have our people, the team piece figured out, and the leadership and all the things that go around people. Then it came down to process. We couldn't run a business if we couldn't manually map what our processes were and know what our data was before we can actually then use technology to make it go, better and faster. So, I mean, from what I heard from your response, I mean, people is obviously, that's fun. It's absolutely the foundation. And I would say, based on what I know about you, that is pretty much the recipe for your success, is how to lean into the people component, but then you also have the added advantage of really understanding how technology makes it all better and faster. Going back to your technology background, I don't know, how far back can you go to sort of explain to us like why you feel technology is so important?
I think it goes down. I'd almost reverse something you said, which I love, about like if you can't make like technology in a process unless you can write it down. I've always found that if you have to write it down 3 times, you could probably make a piece of technology to it, which I think is the revolution that we're in right now with AI. But so for me, and it probably comes from honestly being learn disabled. One of my challenges when I was a kid is spelling and writing. And so I was very lucky. I had very supportive parents. They got me computers. I mean, there's always a way to augment something with technology. Google's famous for saying originally, everything is their fault. They say everything's their fault. So if you can't spell, that's why they have suggested, right? That's how they came up with that. You couldn't remember the name of the restaurant. They invented Google My Business. You didn't have an address for something, Google Maps, right? Then they're just going to map everything. So I think I've always just leaned into that as a way to get through any kind of obstacles. And then it's just been something that and then we used to have literally it came from my brother's company. It was the rule of if you have to do it 3 times, how do we make it into a piece of technology? How can we automate it? Was the term. So if you have to do it 3 times, let's automate it because you're gonna have to do it 3 more and we can solve that time and probably do it better, right? Like we joke that AI doesn't have a bad day. AI's boyfriend didn't break up with it on its way into work. AI didn't get a speeding ticket. Um, it can definitely help. So
I like that. If you've done it 3 times, then you could probably build, especially like to your point today, you can absolutely build an agent or whatever to do that for you. I guess the question then is also, it still comes back to the scalability, right? So let's just say you've built all these little, we used to call them integrations, now we call them agents.
agents, yep.
But how do you then tie all those agents together so there's all those things you've done three times and then created a technology solution for. But now the next thing you wake up, you have 100 of those. How do you keep them all tied together so that it stays scalable?
I wrote down your 4 statements because I'm taking this like my personal training, by the way. I'm getting like a personal training today. So thank you. But I wrote down those 4 things: the people, the process, the data, and the tech. And I'd almost in my mind when you were saying that, think about them as like spinning plates, right? Like you can't spin one too fast because then the other one might fall. And you've got to kind of keep going back and touching all of them. I think that's the answer to your question as I think about it in that mindset. I can't write too many agents without making sure that the people and the processes understand how those agents are used. And I'm going to use data as the output to kind of help with some of those things. So I'm going to go back and spin that plate a little bit and then find out where I need to add more agents or more process and tech, right? Based on,
Yeah.
so I think it's probably a terrible analogy, but I'm just what came to my head when you were talking about those 4 statements.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that analogy, and I'm 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 also kind of wondering if there was a fifth one, because I kind of like, sort of back to your background in the auto industry. I was at a conference in Chicago a couple of weeks where we were talking about something similar, and the, what I think it actually will be eventually. I want to make those four pillars that we talk about, which are the 4 pillars of what we call RevOps, but really they're the 4 pillars of business. Um, is if there were 5, I would the people would be in the middle, would be the car, and then the other 4 would be the tires. And I think, kind of like your spinning plate analogy, you have to keep the 4 tires equally inflated, because if you spend too much time on the one and it gets flat, you're going to have to stop. So anyway, so if you figure out, because I'm starting to realize that you're also a visual thinker like myself. If you figure out what the 5th thing is, then I think we might have created a really cool car.
Yeah, that's right. An extra wheel. I think they had those no, it was a 3-wheel car they had for a while that could like back up and do all kinds of things. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, in fact, and as I was, back in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, I had my Remarkable out, and I was again trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And what I actually ended up with, so is it Polaris, or one of the Minnesota companies that created that slingshot? Yeah. And I'm like, it's like, what is that? What kind of vehicle is that? But in fact, it was, to me, that was the best analogy I could come up with, because it has, the 2 wheels in the front and the 1 wheel in the back. So then you only need 4 components, right? So the slingshot would work, but I guess not everybody is familiar with a slingshot.
I love the slingshot because to me, it's like if you let a kid redesign a car, like just redesign something you think would be really cool. I feel like a kid would have designed like the slingshot. Like that would have been what came out of their creative, no boundary minds.
So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it for now. Is the body of the slingshot is the people, and in the front, you have process and data, and in the back you have technology, and you got to keep the tires equally inflated on all those, and make sure that the driver is always healthy, which is that's the team. So
I drew a picture of a car just to remind me. So ChatGPT, when I'm playing this back, mark this moment. So
the other thing I wanted that we often run into, which I'm sure you do too, especially because of how you see technology so clearly. We see it all the time, and it's happening again now because of the incredible opportunity with AI, is where you can actually have too much technology, the same way that you can have too much data, where it goes from being an asset to the business to being a liability to the business. Can you think of any examples currently?
I can think of 1,000 examples. And it's because, again, like the AI, we're so close to where AI is with what we do in marketing. And it's so transformative to all of the industries that touch our business right now. But what occurred, we actually sat down as a team and said, hey, let's think about all the things, good, bad, where we should be doing it. And we put a bunch of them up. And then we realized a little bit kind of what I think you were alluding to about like, how do you keep all those things aligned? There is so much around this is going to be awfully specific, but so much around regulation around AI. So if I write software, part of our process. If I use too much AI in my software, does my software become unprotectable? We use a lot of content in what we write. If I use too much AI, that is no longer trademarkable or protectable content. If you are not paying for an AI tool or a technology tool, then your data is the fee, right? Like Facebook is free, and what I give Facebook would have required a subpoena for a court to get where I'm at, what I'm doing, who I was with, all of those things. If I wanted to get that about you last week, I would have to get a subpoena from a court. I give that to Facebook in exchange for this free platform. So as you think about processes, technology, AI, and everything happening in the space, I think that is a tremendous, at least on my mind, regularly, a tremendous mountain to figure out how much do I use where do I need to draw the line, what do I allow or empower my team to be able to use that doesn't create accidental violations. I had a great story from a friend of mine who has a company, and they were using ChatGPT to think about something. I'm trying not to give away too much from his company. And then a couple days later, he was back in ChatGPT, asked it a question, and it recommended something that he had put in the original data set. And he went, oh, shite. It's learning from my inputs. So how do you not put stuff in there that might be proprietary or protected, right? Maybe I want to respond to a employee. What technology can I use that I can put some of that information that might be private, protected, but I'm trying to help myself think through it, that won't potentially create a liability for me exposing employees, personal information. So I think that is going to be from technology, and I'm lumping AI and tech, but that's because it's everything. It's in Salesforce, it's in HubSpot. And I'm lumping all that. It's on video recordings. It's on down to, like, if you're using any kind of web conferencing tools, if you're not paying for that, you're using a free tool, check the privacy rights around that, because they might be reported. We work with Google. If you're using a free Gmail, if your Gmail is free, Google's reading the email contents for me to market to. Now, they don't tell me the contents, but I can tell you whether or not, your wife's yelling at you because you forgot to pick up Drano on the way home last night. So for me and for us, one of the big challenges is, how do you balance technology without creating liability? That was a super
Yeah.
long-winded way of answering that, but it's
No,
fresh on the brain. So
no, but I think it really supports what you and I were talking about just before that, which is, so let's just kind of go with the slingshot, and hopefully everybody knows what we're talking about. The vehicle that has two wheels in the front and one wheel in the back, and it looks like super fun. Although the people driving it typically have their music too loud, but um, the idea again, if that single back wheel is the technology, and I completely agree with you that AI is technology, even though it's going to be able to do more than a lot of other technology, because it's going to start helping a lot with process and data and what have you, and of course supporting the people. But if that wheel gets overly inflated, and then like sort of explodes, then you're no good, because the whole thing comes to a screeching halt. So again, it's figuring out. So every business leader has to be strategic in how they have to be solving real case, business challenges that are, so when, so a lot of people listening, and I know you and I both run our businesses on EOS, when you're in that weekly L10 and you have an issue that you're discussing, it's typically starts, is it a process issue? And if it is a process issue, is it something that's being caused by technology or AI, or that can be improved by technology or AI? And if not, then don't go and build technology that's not going to fix that particular process, because until that process is fixed, the business isn't going to move ahead.
And I think you have to have like an overarching, um, you know, technology and AI right now kind of remind me of Icarus, right? I don't want to fly too close to the sun. I don't want to fly too close to the ocean. Finding that sweet spot's a constant challenge right now. But even down to like a poor team member who didn't mean anything by it, but grabbed a free tool to listen to the phone call with the client so it could write itself notes. Who owns that data? Did you just violate anything with your clients? So we have clients that have come to us directly and said, listen, we do not, we require and ask you to acknowledge none of our calls can be recorded, no video, no audio on any of our calls, which we use a CRM that plugs into. So yeah, I think pretty strongly most businesses are going, where we have a CTO or a CPO or chief product officer, chief technology officer. Most companies are going to have somebody whose primary job is that AI component, whether that rolls up to the same house or not. Um, but it's hard because even technology, like just never mind AI, because I keep going there, but how much data do you put in what? And yeah, it's a daily challenge.
Any leaders of any businesses that are serious about growing and making their products and services better and their customers happier, we have to figure it out,
Yep.
right?
Well, and the speed of change right now. I was at an event with Google and they were showing the adoption. I'll do it this way, like the adoption of like radio, and then the adoption of TV, and the adoption of the cell phone, and then they showed the adoption of AI, and it's like this, and that's technology, right? I mean, it was wild to think about how fast it's changing. And I never thought about who owns data clauses in all my technology, but I went back through all of my vendor agreements the last 2 months and made sure that if it wasn't specifically called out, it is now. We own our own data set. You cannot use it even for aggregated purposes without express permission.
The whole Google, the stuff that's going on in the highest boardroom at Google right now is obviously fascinating, but I won't get into that.
Their
right
chief,
now.
You'll get a kick out of this. Their chief data scientist is also a magician. And maybe you won't. I always think that's so funny. Like the guy that's doing this AI, that's like almost like modern magic, is also a magician. So
that is a super cool fun fact. Yeah. Yeah. Katie, so while we're sort of on this topic of sort of things evolving and shifting, what is one shift in how you lead and operate today that would have surprised you in the 2018 version of you?
I go a little bit slower. And I think what I've discovered over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that sometimes you go slower to go fast. And I don't think the 2018 me would have realized that. I think the 2025 me realizes sometimes you go just a teeny bit slower, which actually makes you go faster. And that was a hard concept for me to grasp. And it took, to your point about people, it took some people around me going, now, wait a second, just 1 second, just for one more second. Because I'm a very instinctual person. I operate very heavily on instinct, which is not the best way to operate.
But it's very, very common amongst entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But taking the time just to slow down, I'm not an analysis paralysis person. I'm not let's go back and rethink every decision we made. But someone said that line to me. Sometimes you go slower to go fast, and I take that to heart.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And I share this. It feels like almost weekly with our team too. And I think a lot of it is partly for me, and then partly because I really believe it. Because one of our core values is be better together, which is again all about teamwork and the fact that we all bring our unique abilities, to the table. But it's also, there's an African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And again, and there's probably 1,000 similar quotes and analogies, but the reality is that if you're in this for the long run, which I am, then you have to slow down and make sure that you're bringing everybody along. Otherwise, you're going to be way ahead and alone, and again, you're going to get to a point where you cannot go any further, right?
I've heard that proverb before. I like it too. One of our core values is kind of similar. It's but said a little bit differently. We say we're dedicated to each other's success. It's a way to think about like what I do contributes, even down to like how do I put in a ticket when a customer has an update they need to the website? Did I put enough information that the person I'm giving it to can be successful? That's kind of the in it together component that we have too. But yeah, I think to your point when you said EOS, I thought that's a lot of it probably came from implementing EOS too. It's a great tool for the company, and it gave you a different way. When you're small, in my opinion, you can do a lot with just your willpower. Like I go open up the door and yell at everybody, we're doing this today, close the door and get to it. When you get bigger, the processes just become absolutely requirement for success.
Yeah, which again, I guess comes back to something that you and I were talking about before, where, I know that you also have a similar belief to myself, which is the customer isn't always right, right? And the reason that they pay you and I and and us and people like us for our services is because you know they need guidance from people who know what we know that they don't know. And so again, that's one of the reasons that the customer isn't always right, because if they were, then why would they need us? um, which means then that the people who are then providing that guidance and those services to our clients, of course, is our team. And I think this is why it's no surprise that we both, and I'm sure most of the people listening, that have core values or core principles in their businesses probably have something similar around teamwork, as ultimately what it comes down to.
What are your core values?
So,
What else do you guys have? I'm just curious. I should have
so
looked it up.
yeah, so our first one is lead the change.
Oh, I like that.
Again, because we believe that change is the only constant, right? And it's part of who we are and what we do, because we really do believe that technology continuously makes the world better, right? And you just gave the example that you just saw recently, the data on of how technology has an impact, right? Um, and it's probably been 10 or 12 episodes since I've mentioned this, so I can probably say it again. But it's you know the we moved from the Stone Age to the Iron Age, not because we ran out of stones, right? We moved to the Iron Age because we realized you could do more and better things with iron than you could with stone. And to me, that, so of course now AI, just fast forward 1,000 years or 10,000 years, is kind of the latest thing. And I know that it'll make, so the world is already the best that's ever been today. And in 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, it's going to be even better because of the evolution and progress that we make as humans because of technology, right? So and ultimately, a lot of our clients are working with us because they need somebody to guide them through that change, because they believe that the change is necessary. So yeah. And then the second one is make things happen. So again, without action, nothing really
I've
happens.
heard of a
Which
lot of
that
great ideas with poor execution. They get nowhere.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I've got plenty of ideas, but I realized it took me a long time. I'm also a slow learner, which relates to our next core value. But I realized very, very late in life that you can think as much as you want, but until you do something, nothing's going to happen. And then our third, which is the final one that we haven't talked about, is learn with purpose, which is so again this continuous learning mindset. Because again, if which is linked to, again, what we do, because if you're not learning about, for example, how technology is going to make your life and your clients' lives and your family's lives better, then clearly you're going to get left behind.
Every time I hear people's core values, I'm like, oh, I should steal that one. Ours, we have a lot of overlap. I think our executes is like your second one there, right? Action oriented.
Make things happen.
Yeah, make things happen. Dedicated to the success of others. I told you about that one. We have a unique one we call GAS, which stands for give a shit. There's a lot of people suffering from lack of gas in the world right now, and just a better way to live. You got to care about what you're doing, care about the people you work with, care about the people you work for. Grace. I think that comes out of the history of a lot of our team members' sobriety. Be who you are and humbly confident. So those are our core values.
So we only have 4 currently, and they've sort of evolved because again, using EOS, you kind of revisit them once a year, and you learn from experience and mistakes, of where maybe a core value had an unintended consequence, and you have to sort of reframe it or reword it or whatever. Yeah, cool. Those are really
Yeah. I like
those are
your
really
lead the change. I like that one a lot. I'm going to look into that one on is it on your website? Do you have all those on your site?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm gonna dig into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So Katie, as we wrap up, as you think about sort of your next sort of 60 to 90 days, what advice do you have for, business leaders listening, about what they could or should be doing, or could at least think about, if they want to be better prepared for the future and the growth of their businesses?
Well, you and I are having this conversation on the very last day of July 2025. So I think and I think we are in for a lot of change, market conditions, a lot of change with the AI front of things. And I think it's just a matter of leaning into, I'm going to use your people, your processes, your data, and your technology, and not getting complacent. Because I think the challenge is what works today, and people, we with the RPRS, right person, right seat on EOS, whatever you want to call it, they might be the right seat now, but then something happens and it changes. So constantly reevaluating those. I like the spinning plates thing. I'm going to go back to that. Constantly looking at where you need to be spinning those plates or keeping the air in the tires. So I think it's just a matter of, especially with where we are in the world at the moment, reevaluating those and being okay with a lot of people don't love change. I love change. Being okay with changing and pivoting, really just taking a deep dive and looking, and then revisiting and looking again and looking again. um that's probably the biggest thing, for at least for me, for the next 60 to 90. That's what we're going to be spending a lot of time on here on our side, as we lay the groundwork for going into fourth quarter and into 2026.
Great. I think that's really good advice. And of course, I couldn't help, as you reminded us about the spinning plates analogy, and then going back to what you said a few minutes ago about the magician at Google. There's some interesting sound bites that are going to come out of this recording.
It was so listen, a little net branding never hurts. So when I found that out, he's big into card tricks. So when I found out that he was a magician, I had this is a decks of cards. And the next time I met him at an event, I carried these cards with me, and I ran up to him and I said, "Would you like some cards so you could do your magic tricks?" And he was going to India that literally from that event to India for the holidays. He goes, "Oh, this will be great." And so in my head, he was playing with my cards at all of his family trips over the holidays. And I'm like, yes, he gets to see my brand over and over and over. So branding never hurts. Little
Right.
shameless promotion never hurts. So
Yeah, and hopefully he was happy with the cards.
yeah. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Now I got to stress about that. Thanks so much.
Because I know that the magicians, I believe, are very particular about the cards that they use. I guess you'll find out soon enough.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly. No, hopefully they're good quality cards. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
So I guess I need to ask you one more question that's related to your CAMP, because I've seen this before, and I felt it and thought about it again when you talked about the M standing for marketing, because what I'm seeing is like, so I know that that's where you started, and that's where your a lot of your expertise and background is, but I mean, and I'm not sure what the acronym would be if you replaced M with B or whatever, but I think you're touching a lot more than just marketing, and well, I know you are. So just anyway, an interesting thought to see, because I think that's something else that's evolving that we've seen. When we started in 2014 as a HubSpot partner, it was a marketing platform.
Yep.
And then they added the CRM, and then they added Service Hub, and now it's this complete customer platform. So we started in marketing, but now we're just business technology focused on the revenue side of the business. But every single client of ours now, which is also, they're much bigger businesses than they were 10 years ago, the integration with their ERP or whatever software that they use to run their back office, as we call it, it's just, it seems like a natural evolution. Is that something that you're thinking about?
Yes, because I was literally just with a very large group client of ours yesterday, and we were talking about how marketing and operations are slowly merging. Right, there isn't going to be well, there will still be, but marketing and operation, they're too tied together, right? It's really easy for marketing to blame operations. Oh, I brought you a bunch of leads, and then operations, oh, they're shitty leads, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But they're really coming together because of technology. Because now I can tell you because of AI, I can tell you how many calls are brought you that were bookable, how many forms came in that were bookable, what did we actually produce based on, down to it was from the side of a bus, right? So as you're bringing that together, for us, our clientele, we think about it a lot about meeting our clientele where our clients are. Most of our clients are tradespeople. All of our clients are tradespeople, and most of our tradespeople still think of that single thing. But it's interesting. It's an interesting.
No, and I think, and I guess that's what your answer might be, because again, you also don't want to complicate things, and you want to stick to what is solving for the customer ultimately, right? And if what they think about when they need to think about you is marketing or leads or whatever, then obviously that makes total sense. I was just curious because I do think that I just feel like that is going to evolve.
We're seeing it, and we're seeing it down at the plumber that comes to your house level, right? I mean, so yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's for sure what we're seeing too.
Excellent. Well, Katie, thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to another conversation soon in the future.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time.